Hey, welcome back to another episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. I'm Jake Bodine, and I have an amazing guest with us this week. In fact, he's got an incredible story, not only where he came from, but what God is doing through him now. And that is Casey Diaz. Casey, it's so great to have you with us this week.
Oh man, it's great to be here, man. Thank you so much for flying me out here.
Heck yeah, man. Well, we're excited. I know a little bit about your story, but our audience may not have a clue. But I'd love to just hear from the very beginning. I know that you were originally from El Salvador. You were a part of the gang life for a very long time before going to prison. And why don't you just start from the very beginning, maybe even share a little bit about your childhood, and then kind of what got you into the gang life, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, at 2 years old, I came from El Salvador here, and we landed in what's called the Rampart District of LA, which is about maybe 6 to 7 miles from downtown. And had a normal childhood, I guess, in the beginning.
Yeah.
Your eyes are somewhat innocent, I guess. But grew up and went to Hoover Elementary School. Had a great time there. The only thing that I could really look back at that wasn't so great very early on was the domestic violence in the house. My father was a heavy drinker and dealt drugs, and he was also a mason, concrete mason.
Yeah.
And but hardly ever worked. He was making money selling drugs and getting high and drinking. And then my mom, on the other hand, was the one that was carrying the household. We lived in a little small apartment, probably about maybe 600 square feet of apartment. Didn't have a room or anything like that. And you would every week, without skipping a beat, he would just beat her. Beat her like a man beats another man, kicking her. As a kid, you look at that and you try to stop it. You can't. He's an adult. You're a little child, and so that starts to mess you up. I think it starts to change how you look at things as a kid. I wasn't aware of any other friend of mine going through that. And then my mom, she's working 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. Wouldn't see her until like Sunday. Sunday was her day off. And the activity that I got to enjoy with my mom in my early childhood was doing laundry. That was our spotlight is, I knew that I was going to hang out with my mom. We were going to walk to the laundromat. I learned how to fold clothes there.
Yeah.
And then she'd give me a quarter or two to go play a video game. That was back then when video games were.
We're a quarter or two.
Yeah, exactly. So I to this day, I could remember the time being spent with her on those Sundays. We never went to church. That church was never mentioned. It was just, we're in the dark of that. I was. We never went. I guess we were Catholics by tradition, I guess, or whatever someone may call it. But never. There was no Bibles. There was no questions about God or that. I was just not in there. And at the age of 8, there was an incident that I got to witness in an alley, and the apartments in L.A. are very much like the apartments in New York, where they have the fire escapes, the 3-4 floors. In this particular apartment, it was a 3-story apartment, and my mom had just been beaten, and I had, she told me to get out, to run. And I would always end up at this fire escape, and where I sat and dangled my feet, because they had bars. And I was there, just sitting there, kind of, didn't know what to do. And out of nowhere, this car just drives through the alley, and parks under the carport. Gentleman gets out of the car, and there's on this side, so he must have passed by these three guys that are walking up this alley. So he gets out, doesn't scream, doesn't yell, walks right up to him, walks right up to all three of them, and puts, rounds in each one of them.
Wow.
Immediately killing two of them.
And how old are you at this time?
I'm 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
And the alley is right there. I mean, I'm seeing this front and center.
Yeah.
And the third gentleman that's there is able to kind of run staggered and falls under another carport from the building in front of me. And he's in a sitting down position. The guy unloads, and I didn't know what kind of gun it was until later on in life. It was a revolver, but he unloads and reloads and fires another shot at each one of them, walks over to this guy that's yelling, and he was actually screaming for his mom in Spanish, and executes him right there. He does not run to his car. He just walks to his car. He doesn't peel out, just like nothing had happened.
Yeah.
And that was my first look at what murder looked like. And I remember just, it almost felt unreal that I had just witnessed that. Later on, when you come from a broken home like that, where there's so much chaos with domestic violence, with drugs, drinking, you hit the streets. And, my mom being at work all day and my father not being a present dad, you hit the streets. And there was no, nobody told me, hey, be here before the lights turn off. I was home whenever I got home.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about, I'm 8, 9 years old, 10 years old on the street, and nothing good could happen out of that, right?
Yeah.
So one of my friends, that there was about maybe 15, 20 kids in the neighborhood, and one of their older brothers, his name was Ralph, had I remember he was gang writing on the floor. And I approached him and I asked him, I said,
and gang writing, that's like tagging?
Yeah, but tagging and gang writing are two different things.
Okay.
Tagging is the graffiti part, looked at as art. And then there's gang writing, which is also called graffiti, but, in LA we tend to separate the two.
Okay.
They're two different things. So he's gang writing on the floor, and I go and I ask him, what's that all about? And he gives me the pitch. This is the neighborhood, this is what it's all about. We take care of our own. And he sells me, man. That dude was a salesman. And as a kid, I'm 11 years old. Yeah. At that time, and I bought what he sold. He packaged it right, and the marketing was.
What
was
is
great.
that like? Do they sell the idea of a promise, like from like family, loyalty, all that kind of stuff, brotherhood? Like, what's attractive about it?
That's what it is. It's because you really don't have a family structure at home.
Yeah.
Right? That's missing. So now here's a guy who's older than you. And by older, he was probably like 17 at that time. And he's telling me, no, this is like a family. We're a family. Anything happens to you, we got your back. Yeah. And I remember seeing prior to that, he would always get dropped off with, 2, 3, 4, carloads of dudes, and which were gang members. And there was always girls, and they always looked like they were laughing. It looked like fun. To be honest with you, it just looked like fun. And I thought, I could do that. Yeah. And the next thing I know, I get jumped in at 11 years old. Get jumped in, and then I meet.
What's that experience like? We have a lot of listeners that don't fully understand the whole gang mentality, as well as like what it takes in order to become a gang member. It's not like you just raise your hand one day. I mean, obviously you kind of do, but there's other things. What does it mean to get jumped in?
So in Los Angeles, when you get jumped into a gang, there's several ways that gangs do it differently. There's gangs that choose to jump you. That means they get a few gang members and they beat you. Some gangs use a 13 second count, and the count is very slow while you're getting beat. Other ones they'll spell out their gang name and while they're beating you. And once you survive that, there's a shaking of the hand and you're in the Brotherhood.
Yeah, and that whole point is like to test your grit.
It's like a frat, right? It's an initiation.
Gotcha.
And everybody goes through it.
Yeah.
So you survive that, you're in. And so I was in, and very quickly I got introduced to a gang member by the name of Rabbit. And Rabbit, or Conejo, was a very influential guy in this gang in Los Angeles. Everybody knew this guy, and he took me under his wing. For whatever reason, he took a liking to me, and you got to look at this where here's this older gang member that kind of pulls you in, and now everybody's looking at why this guy has picked this guy, right? Mm-hmm. How does he get into these doors, into these meetings, into these parties? What's so special about this kid? Me being with Rabbit. And I don't know what it was, man. He just took a liking to me. And I remember one day he tells me, he says, I'm going to take you to, we're going to go jump somebody real quick. A rival gang member from 18th Street. And he said, and at that time, we actually were, that gang and our gang got along, but he didn't like them. And so he takes me in this stolen Toyota. And I remember there was no seats in the car. He had stripped it, no 9 yards. And he's gunning it, man, going from alley to alley at about what felt like 100 miles an hour. I mean, wouldn't stop. I mean, just from one alley to another alley. We could have got hit. We could have lost control. And I seriously thought, we're gonna eat it. It's not gonna be good. But he was just that guy. He's just a daredevil, I guess, right? And we found the guy that he was looking for, and got out of the car. And his approach was very devious, because he approached them not with yelling or screaming. He approached them as a friend, like hey, what's up? What's cracking? Walked right up to him, and then starts stabbing him with a screwdriver. And I'm standing just about the same distance that we're standing or sitting. And I remember he just hands me the screwdriver, and blood's very sticky. He hands me the handle of it, and he said, your turn. The guy was already on the floor. And that was my first stabbing with this guy.
What's going on in your head at that point?
I didn't feel like
because obviously you didn't know that you're going there to do that.
No, I didn't know that I was going to do that. I didn't feel like I would have been. I didn't feel threatened if I would have said no. I almost, in a sick way, wanted to do it to impress him, and as hard as I could, swung the screwdriver and started stabbing this guy. And we got in the car and we left. And I remember him bragging about me partaking in this to everybody. And everybody thought it was the coolest thing. And from that moment, I started to taste street fame. And it just started, and it's almost like I wanted to outdo the last thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Rabbit ended up getting stabbed himself and dying from being stabbed to death by a rival gang. But that continued in my lifestyle, where when you're in a gang, There's girls, there's drugs, there's parties, there's all kinds of stuff, right? But none of those things really pulled me in. What pulled me in was the violence. And that's what I wanted to do. And I almost felt like I wanted to take the baton from Rabbit and continue, that legacy.
Wow.
So that's what I did. And I would go into rival gang territory. I didn't like drive-by shootings. I thought that anybody can do those. Didn't take much to just drive through, roll up a window and spray people. I just thought that was a bit cowardly. I liked Rabbit's approach of walking into somebody's neighborhood, taking a hold of them and doing what you got to do, right? So I continued that behavior, and that really got my name out there in LA. In fact, to this day, there's murals that were made with my name on it and all kinds of stuff, man. Wow. That you become like a street legend in that atmosphere, and at 16, I would get arrested for the murder of another rival gang member. And it just, you don't stop. You would think I went through the whole juvenile system there, East Lake, Sylmar, probation camps, you name it, I've been through it. But then, you step into the Los Angeles County Jail, and this is where it gets more serious.
Yeah.
I got housed in what's called the gang module in the LA County Jail, and the gang module is where they house everyone that's somebody. So just being in there, man, your name just keeps going up. And I did my time in reception for a minute there in Delano State Prison, and then I waited to catch a chain to New Folsom State Prison, where I would spend the rest of my my sentence there, and I would be in what's called the shoe term in solitary confinement because of who I was already in there.
Yeah. So what's it like being 16 years old? Obviously, you're kind of fearless at this point in your life, obviously, but there has to be still some kind of, like you just said, it gets more serious when you're getting put into an adult prison and you're only 16 years old. What's going on through your head at that point in time?
Well, so initially when I went in, I was taken to East Lake Juvenile Hall. And my trial would then, end up at the criminal courts building. So by the time I hit the county jail, I'm 18.
Okay.
And when I got arrested, I was 2 months shy of my 17th birthday. I was still 16 though, right? So at 18, I'm already in the county jail. I'm in there, and now you're rubbing shoulders with dudes that, I mean, this is their life. There is no turning back kind of thing for them, right? And I get introduced from person to person. Then I get transferred to Wayside, to a unit called 2400. They probably renamed it by now. And this is where everybody that's in there for murder is housed. I mean, everybody.
And how many people are in that unit?
There is about 120, I think it is, inmates. And it's a big, giant dorm. So now it's not cell living, which makes it even more dangerous because the riots, right? I don't know it was a sick mentality, man, that, as a Christian now, if somebody were to say, do you think that were you possessed? 100%. Because the normal mind doesn't act that way. And for me, it was just, I craved the violence, man. And you read the scriptures, that people drink violence like a glass of wine. That was, when I ran across that in the scriptures, that hit me, that's exactly what I was doing. I craved it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in on another episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. I just wanted to take a quick second and encourage you, number one, as a listener, thank you for being a part of what God is doing in and through this ministry. We're just praying that he will continue to be able to share these stories all over the world and telling his story of what he's doing in the lives of people that are behind bars. If you've ever thought about making a donation or a gift towards the ministry that is happening here, I would love to encourage you to do so. You can do that by going to godbehindbars.com/donate. No matter the size of gift, it helps support the work that is happening in and through this ministry. And I want to thank you in advance and continue to tune in to this episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. You know, it's funny that you say that, because that's kind of, even for me in my personal story, like that's what shows me how real God is. Yeah. You know, this whole idea of like, like I get in arguments all the time of like, what about this? What about that? Based in history, Bible, whatever, theological debates. But where I know that he's the most real is who I am today versus who I was without him.
Yeah.
And the renewing of the mind that you just talked about. Like, it's even hard for me to imagine of being the old me and how I could have even thought that way or done those things based on who I am today by him renewing my heart and mind. And that's the 100% evidence that I know that he's real. And so, it was just you speaking to that. It's very like, you look back and you're like, man, almost like out of body. Like, who was that person?
Yeah. You know, I talked with a gentleman that battled with drinking, right? And they have a 12-step program for that, right? Alcoholics Anonymous. For the person that craves, hard drugs, there's NA, right? Narcotics Anonymous. But there's no, what step program is there for somebody that loves to stab people and murder people? There's no 12-step program for that.
Yeah.
There's not enough steps to cure that. It takes Christ coming into the heart of a man, recreating that heart, or taking it away and putting a new one.
Yeah.
And our mind, having that mind of Christ. It's a trip, because I would have never, if somebody would have told me, hey, this is you later on in life, I wouldn't have believed it. But while I was in solitary confinement, this little Baptist lady by the name of Frances Proctor, a little prison ministry, and this is what I love about prison ministry, man. And I'll share how I ran away from prison ministry for a long time. But here's this, I'm in a 8x10 cell in New Folsom, and you're segregated from everybody else. And there's this little black lady who's having asking questions from a CO, a correctional officer. Is there a man in that cell? So my cell was the last cell, and it was a double gated cell. So you have the perforated metal steel, followed by a solid door, and there's about a 1/16 of an inch that I can see from my tray slot. So when you open the flap, you could see it only from the shins down. And so this lady is asking this CO, is there a man in that cell? And the CO is telling her, yeah, but you don't want to do nothing with that. You don't want to waste your time, type of deal. He discourages her from approaching my cell several times. Now, I didn't know that she was pointing at my cell until he says to her, that's Diaz in there. You're going to waste your time, but go ahead and approach the cell. So she walks over, and she says something to him, too. She was a brave lady from the gate, man. She says, Jesus came for every man in this block, including him, right? So she walks over, and she says, hi, how are you? How you doing in there? And, me being a little smart, but, I said, I couldn't be any better. And I laughed. And I remember her saying, well, that was a stupid question. And I said, no, it's all good. I said, how can I help you? And she goes, I'm here, part of Tri-Stone Baptist Church. We come here the last Thursday of the month, and we just want to talk to you about Jesus. And as soon as I had the hint that this is about religion, I cut her off, and I said, hey, no, I don't. That's not what I don't want. I don't need that. I don't want that. shake the spot kind of thing. Very respectful, but I don't
Yeah.
want that. What you're selling, I'm not buying. And I remember, looking at that day now, I believe that God puts words in people's mouths in critical moments when He's about to call you. And this was the like God was already working in my heart somehow, and I didn't even know it. But she says, I'm going to put you on my hit list. Now, this is a prison environment.
Yeah.
In fact, this is the inner prison.
Yeah.
This is where all the heavyweights are housed, and she's using a word that we use.
Yeah.
I think that it was the Holy Spirit that put that phrase in her mouth, because she says, "I'm going to put you." And I asked her, I said, "What did you say?" And she goes, "I'm going to put you on my hit list, my prayer hit list, because Jesus loves you and He's going to use you." And I thought, man, this lady's nuts, man. This lady's nuts. What is she? She has no clue of where she's at, right? And I look back and I go, it didn't matter for her. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
She had no fear.
It was her assignment.
It was her assignment.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, listen." She goes, "Is it okay if I stop in just to say hi to you and pray for you when we come over here?" And I said, "You do whatever you want. Just I'm letting you know. Just don't bring that up. I don't need that." And it was in that cell that later on, after a year and about 7 months, 8 months of her interceding and praying for me, and her consistency and the love of Christ in her heart, that I had an encounter in which I talk about in my book, The Shot Caller, and I describe exactly what happened in that cell. Undeniable, because, like you said earlier, the only evidence is the way I looked then is not the way I look now.
Yeah.
The way I think and act, it's a different person, right?
Which, before we get into that part of your
Yeah.
story, because I want to get into that, but I think it's important for our listener, especially the outside listener, to fully understand. I think some people think that when someone finally gets caught and they go away to prison, it's like, well, all they have to do is turn to God. Of course, they're going to turn to God. That's not the case in your story. In fact, when you got to prison, you kind of ramped up, and I think that maybe speak to even how you got the name Shot Caller, because there is two different paths you can still take. You can say, hey, you know what, I'm going to change my life and I'm going to be different, or I can completely embrace this persona that I've become, and you can live that out in prison as well. So I think especially for our outside listener, like, there is the ability to run as God is continuing to pursue you while you're still incarcerated. And for a while there, that was your identity before you had that encounter with the Holy Spirit. What was that encounter like? Describe the day when you met Jesus.
On this particular day, in the shoe, there's no windows. You don't know if it's day or night. In fact, the only reason that you know it's day or night is because the meal, obviously eggs, breakfast, anything after that is lunch, right? But other than that, you won't see the sky. You won't breathe fresh air.
Wow.
You're in a box, man. That's it. You and your thoughts. And back then, in solitary confinement, in like the Corcoran Shoe, Pelican Bay, New Folsom, you had no visitors. Attorney calls about the only thing that you had: white pair of boxers, white T-shirt, roll of toilet paper, 2-inch mat, a sheet, and a blanket, and that was it.
And probably a whole lot of noise.
And a whole lot of noise. And then you had, there was no TV. You had no celly. You were in one-man cells. So it's the end of the road, basically. So I'm there, and this is about a year and 7, 8 months of her praying and stopping by. And I'm laying there in this cement slab. I'm looking at my wall. And as I'm looking at the wall, I have my hands just like this, just laying there, normal day. I start to see what looks like a movie reel, like the old 35 millimeter
Yeah.
reels, and I could hear the tape, that thing, right? Now, for your audience, you know, there's a lot of guys in solitary. In my book, I talk about my next door neighbor, the cell over me. A lot of dudes, the walls collapse and they start hallucinating. They start hearing things, and that's it. That the light turns off on them, and they're never the same after that. And so, the guy next door to me, his name was Piggy. He was in there 9 years by the time I got there.
Wow.
So he had been sitting in that cell for a long time, and I witnessed him losing it, like completely losing it. So me seeing this on my wall, my initial thought was,
You're losing your mind.
"That's it. I'm done." You know, this Piggy has ducks, and I have a movie. This is what I'm seeing.
Wow.
and it's, I mean, and it starts from when I was a kid. Everything in order. I could see my whole life being played as a child, all the way to the first candy that I ever stole. To, I mean, things that only I know I witnessed and saw, right? And then it would stop, and I started to see this guy carrying this cross, walking, and crowds. And whoever this guy was, nobody liked him.
Did you have any idea of who Jesus was at this point?
Zero.
So you don't even know the story of the cross.
I don't know the story of the cross. I
Wow.
never went to church. Obviously, the name Jesus you hear, but as far as the story, never. And Frances never got the opportunity explained to me, because she would only stop for 3 to 4 minutes. That's the only time the amount of time that was allotted for them. So it was, and because I pushed her off with, "Don't talk to me about that," her approach was more like, "How you doing?" Like, just kind of like cheery, right?
Yeah.
"Let me pray for you." And I was like, "Yeah, well, do your thing, whatever." But I pushed her, so she didn't get the opportunity to explain the story to me. So here I am, and I see this guy carrying this cross. Whoever this guy is, nobody likes him. I can hear the crowds. I can all of that. And then it would stop, and it would go right into me committing these crimes, some that I haven't even shared ever, right? Like they died with the old man, they're going to stay there, that kind of thing. And I'm watching this, and I see the cross. He could, the nails on his hands and feet. I see all of that. I see the cross, him being lifted up on the cross. I'm still seeing, and then it would stop, and it'd go back to my crime scene, all of that. Now, here's what got to me. Since I was about 8, 7 years old, I remember I mentioned there was about 15, 20 of us kids that played out in the street. This is prior to the gang lifestyle. My real name is Darwin. That's my legal name. I never liked that name. Again, nobody had told me about. So you're a kid, you don't know about Darwinism or
Right.
any of that stuff,
Or you don't care to listen.
or you don't care to listen. One of the two, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't like that name, and I remember as a kid, I said, we were playing baseball, or football, wherever it was, but it was at that moment where you're choosing captains, and I just blurted out. I said, "You know what? From now on, you're going to call me Casey." I don't know where that name came from. I don't know where I heard it first. I liked it, and I just told everybody to start calling me Casey from that moment. So from that moment to this present day, my mother, my father, brother, cousins, no one calls me Darwin.
Yeah.
And the only reason I have to write it is because legal reasons, right? Like documents, flights,
Whatever.
all of that, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, nobody calls me Darwin. So here I am, and I'm seeing this man on this cross, and I can't see his face, but I know he's there. I know there's somebody on this cross. And man, out of nowhere, I could hear him say, "Darwin, I did this for you.
Wow.
And I can hear the breath coming out of him.
Mm.
And it was almost like the sound of my victim. It was like, I believe that when Christ calls you, when God calls you, like he really gets eye to eye with that person, right?
Mm.
So that you could understand what he did for you. And for me, death was, that's what I did, right? This is what I was convicted of. This is what I knew.
Mm.
And when I heard him call me by my first name, man, I remember just hitting the floor and weeping, man, weeping.
Wow.
And you know, I didn't know what to call him. You know, I didn't know. I didn't even call him Jesus because I didn't know that.
Mm.
I just said, God, if that's you, whoever you are, you know, I'm sorry. And I remember being there for a long time, and I remember being so real with God and saying, you know, God, I'm sorry for stabbing this guy, for stabbing this guy, for stabbing this guy, and the list was just ongoing, man. And I remember every time I would confess my sin, it just felt like this peace coming into that cell. I have never felt freedom like I did that day.
Wow.
That was the most freedom I have ever tasted. And I've been out for a minute now. I've been to places where there's beautiful waterfalls and beautiful flowers with my family, with my kids, my wife. We've vacationed some really nice spots. That freedom can't compare to that freedom.
Wow.
There's no way,
Mm.
because God did something that day in my life. And I remember shortly after that, I knew that I would have to step down from being a shot caller,
Mm.
and a life, a hit was placed on my life.
Mm.
And that was, you know, it's prison politics. And in California, it's a heavy weight that everybody has to carry.
Mm.
If you step down from any organization in there, they're going to put a green light on you, and they're going to go after you.
Mm.
And I remember I was supposed to serve my whole entire sentence in lockup, in solitary. And I remember after 3.5 years in there, the gang specialist comes in, and with the warden and some of the riot guys that they use to control the solitary. My gate racks open, and that never happens.
Mm.
Not with someone like myself. They made sure that you were, cuffed up, chained up, and the whole nine yards. And this day, man, the gates just rack open, which was a little strange for me that they racked open like that. I mean, I'm not chained. You know, why would you take a risk like that? And I remember him saying to me, we don't know why we're doing this, but we're going to put you in mainline, in GP. But if you end up doing anything out there, we're going to make sure that we bring you right back. And I had heard the Lord tell me, when you get out, you're going to do a gang meeting, and you're going to tell your guys that you don't no longer have part in this, that you're now a Christian. I mean, those were specific words that God gave me.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, that meant when I paroled out of here, because I'm not going to go to mainline. My whole sentence is in here. And when that happened, I remembered. So I went to the yard and grabbed a handful of guys that the to know guys, right? They came, and I was they have these cement picnic tables out there on the yard, and I was there, and I let them know exactly what I had heard the Lord tell me. You know, I don't want to be part of this anymore, and I'm a Christian now. They simply turned their backs and walked away from me, and I knew that was a green light on my life. I knew that a hit was placed as of that moment. And I remember going back to my cell, and in your cell, you have a wicket. It's a window. It's a very narrow window. And they sent one of my own guys, and he says to me, they're asking me to throw out the trash. But if you change your story, we'll make something happen. And I remember getting up and going to my window, and I said to him, I said, I can't change my story. Something happened to me back there, and I'm a Christian. And I said, but I forgive you for what you're about to do. I knew that he had to do it. And he got really upset, and he goes, no, you don't understand. They're asking me to take out the trash. And I told him, I said, and I remember for a very slight moment, that old man tried to sneak up again, right, inside of me. And I said to him, I said, hey, you were under me. I understand what you need to do. I'm letting you know, do it, and I forgive you, but I'm not changing my story. And so hits at that prison in that particular time were usually best way to do a hit was in the morning during chow. And so that night, it was a long night. I prayed. I read my Bible. And I left a lot of this out on this interview of how, but you can get the book and for all the full details. But
yeah,
I prayed, read, and I remember telling God, I'm not even going to fight back. I'm done with, I don't want to hurt another guy. So I'm just going to turn away and let them do what they're going to do. And like clockwork, man, my gate opened, the racks open, and I sat on my cement slab there, in my Bible. And I didn't want to look at them. I just thought they're going to come in, several of them, and I'll be stabbed to death. Hopefully it's quick. And I see his, like on the side of my eye, I see him with a shank in hand. But I didn't see anybody behind him, which was surprising to me. And I thought, the thought was like, man, this dude's going all out. He wants to do it by himself. He's going to risk that chance. He's going to risk doing it by himself because he doesn't know if I have something or if I'm going to if I'm going to react to that. But he comes in and he says to me, he says, hey, Casey, I can't do this. Can't do this to you. But wherever you're involved in, I'll roll with you. And he becomes the first guy that I lead to Christ.
Wow. Goosebumps, man.
So, the whole transition, man, there was dudes from, initially there was only a handful of us that came to Christ. I mean, God would use us to, bring a dude from Watts, a dude from Compton, a dude from Florence. These are major gangs in L.A., gang leaders who would come to Christ. And, we would get assaulted. We would get jumped. Some of us ended up in the hospital. Some got airlifted. Some were in the prison, the interpretation of a hospital unit in there.
Yeah.
To recover. The infirmary, yeah. And to recover. And then we would come back and do Bible studies out in the yard with our, stitches, staples, busted lips, probably concussions and all that. And nobody complained, man. By the time I would parole from New Folsom, over 200 inmates would come to Christ.
Wow.
And I've been at it ever since, man.
Amazing. That's an incredible story. And I one thing that's been on my mind the whole time that you're talking is, what would Casey today say to the younger Casey? Like, I'm talking the 15, 16-year-old Casey that before he ever had his first taste at any of the gang life. What would you tell that Casey?
Listen to the adult that was trying to get a hold of me online. God, whether God puts either Christian people in your path, some are not believers, but have good intentions. And I could look back and pinpoint, and I'm sure you can too,
yeah,
the many people that God brought to us and tried to help us and try to give us a different compass, a different road. There was teachers. I'm still looking for a particular teacher that saw the best in me at my worst moments.
Yeah.
And all I want to say is thank you to her. And I haven't had a chance to find her. But you know what? I'm amazed at how God works in each and every individual life. I always say that he's like a master chess player. He moves people, and that'll help us. And so what I would say is to my young self is just, man, take that advice. They mean well.
Yeah.
And don't go that route. I wish I regret, man. I regret everything that I've done, like everything. I wish I would have never did any of those things. I wish I could take, the place of my victim. I wish all that, but you can't. It's done, and which makes you more grateful of the grace and the mercy that God has given to us.
Yeah.
To him that has been forgiven much, loveth much, and that's why for me it's important that that I just point to him, man, and he's the one. There's no other way that I would have changed. It was Christ and him alone.
Well, I think too it's important to recognize that like you're not too far gone. Like nobody is. In fact, you could have a string of things that are tied to you of your past and the things that you've done in your life, and that there's still a God in heaven that loves you in spite of it all. And he wants to have a relationship with you, and he wants to redefine your future, even if that means that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. You can have an impact in that very place.
That's right.
You can have purpose and value in that very place, and he can use you to transform hundreds of men's lives that are incarcerated alongside of you. And maybe there's somebody right now that's sitting on the fence and they're in the gang life, and somebody that has been a part of it for a very long time, or maybe they're a young buck that's just started out, but they're scared to change their life because of all of the things that you had listed before. What would you say to that individual?
Oh man, there's God's ready to forgive. And he's there. He stands with an outstretched arm to the sinner, to the person that's broken, to the individual that feels like they've been dealt a bad deck of cards from the gate. God is ready to save, man. And when we surrender, God's knocking, man. God's knocking, man. And he's going to continue to knock until there's no breath in your lungs. And the sooner the better, man. The sooner you repent, the sooner you just say, all right, God, and people don't even need to understand the whole thing. I didn't understand the whole thing.
Yeah.
It got explained to me in a process, and here I am now going from city to city, state to state, prisons, and, and back to that thing. I remember when I first got out, I told God, I don't want to ever come into another prison again. I'll do any ministry except prison ministry. I avoided prison ministry like you wouldn't believe it. Because I just didn't want to step into another.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah, and I would joke around and say, the only bars I want around me are candy bars. I don't want any bars anymore, right? And it wasn't until about a year and a half ago, while I was speaking at Wheaton College, in front of hundreds of prison chaplains and volunteers, that God put this thing inside of my heart, man, that would change that. And now I'm going into prisons, juvenile halls, reentry programs, and sharing my story. I just got back from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, where they flew out over 400 prison chaplains, and I was their keynote speaker there. So now I'm just, God has other plans for me, and just planted a second church.
Amazing.
And married for almost 26 years now.
Wow.
3 kids, 3 books, and a feature film that they're ready to do right now, right? By a big Hollywood studio. And
you couldn't have wrote that story.
No, man.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way, man. And, and Zero Gravity, which is a production company that has my story, I mean, they have an amazing script that's done. They've hired an amazing group of people to handle this whole entire film, and they're just looking for the funds. That's it. That's the last spend. And in fact, I got off the phone with this lady who
Yeah.
and she said, Casey, as soon as we have that, we're rolling. Like, we're excited.
Yeah.
And her husband's excited. Everybody's just waiting for that moment. And, God will provide. We don't know how that all will take place. We just know that we did this for the right reason. And that was not to promote me, it's to promote Christ.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
we hope that in these theaters, people will not just come. This is not a movie for the Christian. I hope the Christians come.
Yeah.
I hope that the church, comes, and brings the non-believing friend and the unchurched to this film. But our dream and what we want and so desire is that the unbeliever come to a theater to watch this film and would walk out.
Yeah, because we were talking just
Christ.
earlier, where it's almost like a bait and switch in a good way.
Yeah.
That, hey, I'm showing up to the theater thinking that I'm watching this prison movie, but it's a redemptive movie, and it's your story of redemption and how Jesus Christ literally transformed your heart, your mind, your future, everything. And I truly believe that, one, it is going to happen, and two, that God's going to use it in a powerful way to lead those that maybe don't have a relationship with him to that opportunity, to where they can make him the leader and forgiver of their life as well. And man, I just want to tell you, it's been amazing to hear your story. I know you've left your family, flew all the way out here to spend just this hour with us, and I appreciate you. And those that are incarcerated currently and watching this on the Pando app, like, I think both of our encouragement to you would be that if you feel God tugging at your heart, I don't care what you've done, how much you've done, like, that yes is the most important yes that you'll ever make in your entire life. And that even if you're 80, there's still a future ahead for you, and he's going to use you in a mighty and powerful way. And so it's never too late. Yeah, Casey, thank you again for sharing and being vulnerable. And it's amazing. Goosebumps throughout the entire conversation of just some of the stuff that you shared, and how God continues to use you. I know that your book, The Shot Collar, in the public, is available on any major platform. They can order it. But on the Pando app, we're hoping to get it on there soon. And when it comes out, I encourage you to read it. But
I host the Shot Collar podcast as well, and I kind of doing the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful for you guys, man, and the work that you've done throughout the years with going into prisons and bringing the hope of Jesus into those prison gates. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy call, but it's a call nonetheless that God said, go visit the prisoners, and that's what you guys are doing, man. And I'm so grateful for prison ministries that are doing it because they love Christ. And it's apparent, it's obvious that that's what you guys are doing. And I'm grateful for people like yourself and organizations like this, the ministries like this that go in there, man, day to day.
Well, thank you, man.
Thank you.
It's our greatest honor. It truly is. And I feel blessed being called to this ministry. In fact, I think it's the best ministry to be called to in the entire world. So I might be biased. But no, man, it was great having you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, man.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. And I just want to thank you as a listener for your continued support and encourage you to share this with as many of your friends and family as possible. It is our heart and goal to tell the story of what God is doing behind bars with as many people as possible. And so as you share this amongst your friends and family and on your social networks, it allows us and supports that goal. Number two is, if you would love to make a gift to God Behind Bars to help us continue the work and to grow the platform of what's happening here as a ministry, I want to encourage you to go over to godbehindbars.com/donate. And no matter what you can give, it all helps in making the mission and vision of introducing as many people to Jesus as we possibly can and connecting them to the local church. And so thank you so much again for being a listener. And we pray that this encourages you just as much as you've been an encouragement to us.